which is why we will work together and continue to work together to address these issues, to tackle these challenges, and to work together as we continue to work operating from the new norms, rules, and agreements that we will convene to work together on.
She really doesn't know anything.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Q&A, the question and answer session. This is going to be heavy on the globalist. What is going on at that level? They are panicking, folks, absolutely panicking. They need to surrender. Zelensky needs to surrender. They're hurting, folks, big time. We're going to talk about them, their agenda. Are we going to get World War III or are we going to get MadMax? What are we getting? What's coming our way? Let's talk about it. Okay, so right now, yeah, there's a war going on over there in beautiful Ukraine. And it probably was a beautiful country at one point. But get this, folks, they're having their Davos, Switzerland, the Davos douches. They're getting together. They're trying to corral the world. And this is what they have to say, right? These elites are warning that the global transition, even though it's a painful global transition, it doesn't need to be resisted. It should not be resisted by nations. So, folks, the globalist scum are openly proclaiming their anti-sovereign, anti-nation state agenda. They don't care about anyone but themselves, while making grandiose claims like Klaus Schwab does. Now get this, folks. Schwab called those who have been summoned to Davos, which includes United States lawmakers, Democrats, Republicans, representatives, governors even. He said they're a powerful community and declared, quote, "We have the means to improve the state of the world, but two conditions are necessary. The first one is that we all act like stakeholders of larger communities so that we serve not only our self-interests, but we serve the community. That's what we call stakeholder responsibility." And I've got to stop right there and try not to vomit. We act as stakeholders of larger communities. So they're saying that the community that is larger than a nation is their community, the globalist community. And that we serve not only our self-interest, but serve the community. Oh, so we serve ourselves and first and foremost, but yeah, we should also serve the community. Okay, let us continue with Klaus's thoughts. And quote, "And second, that we collaborate." Folks, that means conspire, work together to avoid nation states and go over the top of them. Anyways, he says, quote, "And this is the reason why you find many opportunities here at Davos during the meeting to engage into action and impact initiatives to make progress related to specific issues on the global agenda." Folks, nobody elected these assholes or asked them to take control of the world for us or for the community. That is why we actually have elected governments, politicians who are supposed to be accountable. Notice, though, how once these globalists control the politicians via money and corruption and blackmail and extortion, they declare themselves the new benefactors of humanity and nobody should oppose them, right? They proclaim all is good, but we, the little people, will own nothing and be happy. Still, folks, these a-holes say nations shouldn't resist the efforts of the globalist, and they call that selfish if you try. If something doesn't benefit them, the World Economic Forum, these globalists, destroy, attack, steal, and corrupt, kind of like stealing elections and using protests to create violence and destruction with politically disposable groups like BLM, Antifa, and useful social issues like abortion, LGBTs, critical race theory and Marxist communist revolution. And I want to remind everyone after saying that, yeah, I've said it for years, the commies and foot soldiers are all killed once the power brokers control those nation states, whether or not they include them in larger communities. Folks, they're just absolutely revealing themselves to be scum while using flowery language to cover up what they're really saying. We need to get above, serve the community. In other words, who cares about sovereign nations, the laws, and the people? Those don't matter, right? That's selfish. Unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. Now, that's the painful global transition. Do you think Klaus Schmidt or Sorge Goros, do you think they're feeling any pain at all? Not really, folks. But this is a plea that they need to cooperate to get their little goal in, right? Now, this is what's important right here. Well, this is all important. But remember this guy named Henry Kissinger? He was the Secretary of State for President, you ready for this? Richard Milhous Nixon. That's right, Nixon, way back in the early 70s. This guy is still around, alive, sucking oxygen, consuming carbon, and he won't go away. He's 98. Kissinger is 98 years old, folks. He is a living fossil. Why hand him a microphone at Davos unless he is still powerful and still mentally lucid, unlike Joe Biden, and still strategically wise? Folks, the panic over there is palpable. That's why they're meeting. They're panicking about Ukraine. They're panicking, folks. Undoubtedly, Henry, Hank, yeah, Kissinger, he knows there's a problem. And everyone over there is furious because he says Ukraine should cede territory for peace with Russia. In other words, he's saying Ukraine should surrender and sue for peace with Russia. They should cede territory. See, Russia says, well, we're keeping Crimea, and the other regions that are breakaway, well, they can do what they want. They can become their own little nation states, or they can become part of the Russian Federation, yada, 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 whatever. And boy, the left, the Davos, the World Economic Forum, they're very pissed that Kissinger is recommending this. Now, they knew what he was going to talk about, the other big bosses. Undoubtedly, Henry knows the score. Good old Hank Kissinger knows the score because he has real intel, real information about the reality of the fighting on the ground, including the assets on both sides, troop numbers, and I'm sure he has been assessing Russian determination and the global population's appetite and ability to pay for and fight a World War III scenario. So he's saying Ukraine needs to give it up, right? And folks, every good general knows the odds of, before they're going in, before any battle. And I think the Davos douche World Economic Forum went into Ukraine. They pushed it for NATO expansion, knowing they had slim odds of winning, and that they had defeat or surrender, that strategy already in mind, just in case. And that is now what Kissinger is bringing right into public light, because this meeting is also public. We're hearing Kissinger's thoughts. We're hearing the leadership's thoughts. Right? Everything that they say, folks, believe me, they want. But there are some, shall we say, translation issues. A lot of stuff is lost in translation, and that's what we are doing right now. Oh, by the way, get your questions into Jolene in the comments section, wherever you can. Get them in, because I'm going to go for half an hour, then yours. So let's get back to Kissinger and the need to cede, commonly known as surrender. The World Economic Forum in general is going to pretend to hate the idea. Many of the members there will be upset because they lost the war bonanza, the booty of Ukraine. Many of them had a lot more invested in Ukraine, and they don't like taking any losses. But they need to cut those losses, and the World Economic Forum knows it. They need to secure what gains are available. And they need to position themselves for the Cold War economy with Russia that they have now created. And Kissinger wants us to believe, folks, he really doesn't want long-term negative fallout with Putin and Russia. Because he says, oh, yeah, we don't want that. We don't want a war with Russia. We just wanted a war in Ukraine. Folks, long-term negative fallout with Putin and Russia, they knew going in that that would be the direct result of anything, no matter who won the fight to control over Ukraine or how much is controlled, right? This is what Kissinger said, folks. Quote, ideally, the dividing line should be a return to the status quo ante. Yeah, he wants the status quo, which was them using Ukraine as a money laundering operation. With Zelensky in charge, protected by his little secret Nazi battalions, and laundering money and doing biological warfare research and who knows what else in the way of drugs and human trafficking that was going on in just the shithole Ukraine, right? Anyways, he says, pursuing the war, it's Kissinger again, pursuing the war beyond that point would not be about the freedom of Ukraine, but a new war against Russia itself. Folks, there was never to be freedom for Ukraine or its people, just as they don't want freedom for the United States of America or any other nation. All nations are to be controlled by Kissinger and his associates, the World Economic Forum, the Davos douches, the Illuminati, if you will. They have their larger community that they give a shit about. They don't care about us. Freedom's not for us. We will own nothing and be happy, right? The people, like me and you, once a sovereign body politic, are also to be controlled by the World Economic Forum, the Davos gang. Any talk of freedom used by these people is with respect to their ability to freely control and profit us. That's the freedom they want. The freedom to move in and out of nations, to profit, to be above the law, right? What does this mean, though? What is Kissinger talking about? The cool down, the BS call for peace. And Kissinger hopes Putin will concede some of his goals for Russia and Ukraine in exchange for a cessation of hostilities. Yep, sue for peace as the surrendering party. That's what they're doing, right? They're going to try and hang on to what they can in Ukraine by, at this point, giving up. Ceding is giving up. It's surrendering. And don't worry, folks. Zelensky, the world's greatest ever t-shirt wearing, skinny jeans wearing, on his knees, Zelensky will try to hold his power and remain as leader of Ukraine, even though it's going to be a heavily amputated Ukraine when Russia takes what it needs out of there and frees those people. Now, the real losers are the people of Europe, who will have to pay much higher energy costs, the people of the world who will suffer higher food costs, starvation, energy costs, and the Ukrainian people, folks, they will suffer a loss of their dignity, their wealth, the wealth that's being transferred to Zelensky personally, and a new quiet dictatorship. They're going to suffer under a quiet dictatorship because the mainstream media won't say a word about what is happening in Ukraine after the peace talks. Ukraine will once again be installed with a little dictator, a little dictator, and it'll be as corrupt as before and at the disposal of the robber barons of Switzerland to the extent they can make money using it. This is what is happening. World War III, MadMax, what is going on, folks? I've been in this all day long looking at what is happening in Russia, what is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in Switzerland, what are these people doing? And guess who else was there? Oh, yeah, our good buddy, George Soros. You bet. And he says, civilization may not survive. That's what he told Davos. We have to defeat Putin and China, or else. See, they use doublespeak. Remember, folks, they have a special language. Victory doesn't mean freedom for people. Victory means victory for them to make money. and their community of nations that they control. Now, Soros warned that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has hurt Europe and could be the start of another war. Folks, and Soros hates China, and that should suffice to us to explain why the Davos World Economic Forum crowd is really struggling with this Ukraine-Russia outcome. And they don't want to see a Sino-Russian alliance, Chinese-Russian alliance that grows, expands, and becomes independently prosperous without the assistance of the Western banking and military and corporate cartels. Right? They don't want that. Quote, other issues that concern all of humanity, fighting pandemics and climate change, avoiding nuclear war, maintaining global institutions, have had to take a back seat to that struggle. That's what Soros says, yeah. All the issues concerning humanity, pandemics, climate change, war, global institutions, they have to take a back seat to the struggle of Ukraine. And he says, quote, that's why I say our civilization may not survive. Now understand clearly, folks, that Soros is not saying that we, the peoples and nations of the world, won't survive. What he is saying is that the globalist plan for their control of civilization may not survive. They may lose, folks. The World Economic Forum and globalists may lose. And if they lose control, we won't end up with World War III. We may end up with MadMax, right? Their efforts to control the world and gain administrative control via corporate financial incentivization requires the use of climate crisis, pandemic crisis, energy crisis, food crisis, right? War crisis, through the creation and management via Hegelian dialect processes. What did I just say? That's a mouthful of alphabet soup, right? In other words, let me break it down. These are a bunch of globalist fascists, and they're using their control of government through buying of politicians, which we're all aware of. They're all bought and paid for. And they use climate crisis, war, fear, hunger, starvation, oil, gas to create a crisis and then offer their solution, right? Problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialect processes, right? I liked how when I came up with corporate financial incentivization, that means buying off these loser politicians and screwing the countries over. They're afraid they're going to lose that control. That's the civilization Soros is talking about. And this is where they're at. They're in very, very big trouble over in Ukraine. They could lose control of everything because the gambit they took against Russia. And we've been wondering, why did they speed all this up with Cerveza? Why did they speed it all up with the Jim Jones juice? Why did they speed up? Well, the stock market literally crashed in 2019. They ran out of time with their money game. The currency is going to shit. The world reserve currency is the US dollar, and it maintains that status because the US military is used to protect the oil-producing regions of the world, to maintain control of the buy and sell, and that the US gets its kickback from the the oil-producing cartel. This is the other cartel, OPEC. But OPEC seems to be switching teams. They're siding now with Russia and China and India and Iran and South Africa and Brazil. And other countries are going to come on board. That's what they're afraid of, losing their control. I've been trying to put this together with news stories from today to describe what's happening, who is saying what. Are we going to get World War III or MadMax? They're losing. There's no appetite for World War III. No one wants to fund that, fight it, or finance it. So Kissinger, probably the most brilliant among these jackasses, is saying, we better surrender. We better give it up. We better give it up and get all we can out of a peace deal, or we're going to lose all of Ukraine. And they have screwed the pooch on this, folks. And I'm going to tell you how. This is an example. if Kissinger doesn't get his way, his faction, they're going to lose control to China and Russia. Hungary, which Joe Biden pronounced as Hungary, it's Hungary, Hungary, Joe. Hungary is a nation. It's not the state of being before a meal. Hungary has declared a wartime state of emergency. They just passed a rule in Hungary that allows their leader, who is at this time Viktor Orban, to declare a wartime state of emergency, giving him special powers to make deals, to do things to protect Hungary, folks. So hours, it would seem, after this all happened, hours after taking control of Hungary by pushing through a constitutional amendment in Hungary, they pushed it through, allowing the Orban government, the Orban administration, the Orban regime, he now gets to rule by decree when wars break out in a neighboring country. Hello, Ukraine, right next door, right? So Prime Minister Viktor Orban has declared a wartime state of emergency in Hungary. Hungary, by the way, has been resisting the European Union demanding they accept these scumbag immigrants from third world shitholes, because he doesn't want his country destroyed from within, ruined. He doesn't want his tax-paying people, Hungarians, he doesn't want them paying into a welfare system to support a bunch of scumbags who won't contribute and only steal. That's just one of the things that Viktor Orban has done. He is in his fourth administration as prime minister. He is incredibly powerful, incredibly popular, because he's protecting Hungary. So he now has additional powers, special wartime powers. So what does that mean? Well, because of war with Ukraine right next door, the nationalist, pro-Hungary, pro-traditional Hungary culture leader, Viktor Orban, can do what is right for Hungary, and he can ignore any UN or European Union demands that they might try and place upon Hungary. He can ignore them at this point, folks. You know, this state of emergency that other countries are using to destroy themselves. Viktor Orban is saying, right? Hungary, in this state of war emergency, folks, is probably going to make deals with Russia for energy, despite what the European Union may like or say. He doesn't give a shit. He's already stated he wants Russian oil. He wants Russian gas. I'm sure he wants Russian coal also. And he's not going to pay through the nose or not get it, because he's allied with the European Union, who was in power, right? Hungary joined the European Union before Viktor Orban. Such a bad deal for Hungary, they elected this guy who is now protecting them. The European Union may end up giving Hungary the Brexit boot up the butt and say, get out then. They may try sanctioning him, and Viktor Orban can say, I'm not going to pay. So what is the European Union going to do? And the European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve and the Vatican Bank. Oh, there's a Vatican Bank. And the City of London, which is its own city-state inside the City of London, England. What are they going to do to Hungary? Are they going to sanction them? Are they going to cut everyone off? Are they going to announce that Viktor Orban and every millionaire and billionaire is an oligarch if they're from Hungary and therefore evil and they should have all their property confiscated, right? So despite what the European Union may like or say, this is happening. Hungary, folks, may leave the European Union under this emergency act and become an ally of Russia and the other team, right? And folks, the European mainstream media will never make this public and explain the importance of what is happening in a way that other nations and people would support. They don't want that, right? Brexit was a big enough black eye for the European Union. What is happening right now is a realignment of nations. That is what George Soros says is the end of civilization, his ideal civilization. Klaus Schwab says they belong to a community. Well, to benefit themselves and the community. In other words, they need to work together in order to create a world that they like. If you haven't read Brave New World, if you haven't read 1984, if you haven't read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, right, you're missing some of the key components, because those books lay out so much that you could understand what the hell is happening. Even though they're fictional, it talks about what powerful people do and how they operate and think. And then in my life, my experience, watching media, reading books, listening to these people, reading philosophy, reading history, you can see what they're up to. So what is happening is a realignment of nations. What is important and should be important to every nation is food. Oh yeah, folks, food. That is a crisis that is upon us. Of course, water, energy, folks, oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, energy. If you can get it from solar and wind, have at you, enjoy it. It's more power also. But what is important is food, water, energy, national security, national defense, and sound economic and cultural policies. Cultural policies, government shouldn't be involved in cultural protection. Oh yeah, it should. In my opinion, it should. We have an American culture. It was built on freedom, liberty, justice, independence. Yeah, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, you know, American culture. Apple pie, baseball, and go fuck yourself if you don't like it. That's America, right? Hungary has its independent culture. So does France. So does Finlandia. So does Ukraine. So does Russia, right? But after you get energy, I said national security is next, right? Who provides these necessities? Food, water, energy, national security, defense, economic policies, culture, tradition, law and order, justice, right? Who provides these necessary necessities is the safest, most efficient, and most intelligently way. Who does that, right? The European Union and its totalitarian demands, also requiring destruction of culture, the homogenization of their economic and currency issues. Does that help Hungary? Or is Russia itself a nasty thugocracy of types, folks, but it's straightforward and gets shit done while respecting the independence and nationalist cultures of the nations it does business with? That's one thing that Putin and Russia do. They don't go into Kazakhstan and tell the Kazakhstanis, right, how to be Kazakhstanis. Right? They don't. Russia doesn't go into China and tell their biggest trading partner, China, how to be Chinese. They say, you're China, you be Chinese. Let's just do some business. India, South Africa, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, anyone, right? Who is the best, most efficient, productive, safe? Who is intelligently running countries? The World Economic Forum in Davos, demanding everyone obey or else, or we're going to sanction you, or we're going to send our military against you? Or is it countries that allow you to do what you want in your country? Folks, George Soros hates China and he hates Russia. I don't think they're on the same side. I think the World Economic Forum is getting their ass handed to them as the Western system crumbles. And it's going to be put in a lot of pain, right? The painful transition to green energy. Russia, China, the rest of the world are like, hey, we'll take all kinds of energy, whether it's nuclear, coal. They don't give a shit. Natural gas. They'll burn oil, gasoline, diesel to get the job done while they develop cheaper, better forms of energy. Right? There's a difference between mandating a change that the world's not ready for and causing pain and suffering and loss and destruction of an economy while simultaneously destroying the culture of nations like the United States. Oh yeah, we're going to raise the gas prices and we'll be stronger and better on the other side, says Biden. Really? We're going to be stronger and better off after all this pain that they're intentionally causing by forcing this green energy crap, while we don't have the infrastructure in place to provide power to power the cars as well as homes on this green energy idea. The idea exists to do it, right? Base load nuclear power will do it. the addition of additional solar and wind, fine. But it's not in place yet. Still, they push and push and push for higher gas prices to force people into buying electric vehicles that, one, aren't available, two, aren't inexpensive enough, and three, there's no power for them. It'll be great if there's an electric vehicle in every driveway, but sorry, there's no energy to power them around. Just cut a hole in the floor, put your feet through the bottom, scream yabba dabba doo, and paddle your happy ass to work. That's a cartoon, Joe, that's a cartoon. But don't worry, right? Most cartoons and video games look real to these old fossil motherfuckers, right? Like General Barry McAfee, whatever the hell his name is, who thought that footage from a video game was actual Ukraine military kicking the shit out of Russians. It was a video game. Wow. Okay, folks, I threw it out there. That is what is going on. I've got other stuff to talk about. But I want to get to your questions. What do you want to talk about? What did I say? What did I bring up that got your attention, that made you think about this? And again, that's what I think we should be doing, thinking, right? Not just obeying, not acting emotionally, irrationally. We should be thinking about what is happening, what is being said, who claims to be speaking for us, who claims to be representing us. We should be allowed to dissent in our opinion, whether it's medical, political, legal. Right? We should. They want to silence us. Remember, just yesterday, Davos dickheads, right? They came up that they want to recalibrate freedom of speech. Bitch, it's in top gear all the time. That's how free speech works. If you want to keep the RPMs low, you keep it on the QT. If you've had enough of their shit, you should be able to say whatever the hell you want. Short of screaming fire in a crowded room, right? That sort of thing where people can be hurt immediately. All righty. I hope you like the kitchen backdrop I got for today. All right, let's do it. Let's get into your questions, folks. These goose-stepping liberals in America, they have no idea that they're a bunch of useful tools. The critical race theory, LGBS, Antifa, BLM, all of it is bullshit, and it's a tool to bring America down. Goose-stepping liberal morons, every one of them.
Are you ready?
You know what I've done, and I think what I've been successful at for the last decade talking with you guys, is trying to take all this information out there, get rid of the garbage and bullshit, put together the real meat and potatoes, and then break it down in a way that we can all understand. You know, because I actually think, folks, I think at a layman's term level, I can understand their big words and shit. I can see their lofty goals and bullshit ideals. But let's break it down to how it really works. In order for them to win, they have to destroy us. And that's what they're doing. That's why we're preppers. That's why we don't like it, because of our patriotism, the love for our nation, the United States of America. What do you want to talk about? Jolene, who wants to step up and bring up a topic, a name, a person, an event? Who wants to stump the John and tell a lie, tell the truth? We got Opie Waddell, and he's going to start with a stump you, John. He says, 1, MIMO 5G radiation up to 60 gigahertz is a safe level for all carbon-based life forms. Number 2, freeze-dried foods taste the same as fresh foods with no nutrition loss. Neither of those are true. Freeze-dried foods taste not the same as fresh foods. And there is a little bit of nutrition loss. But when it comes to long-term food storage, That's about as good as it's going to get. I recommend you have at least 3 months of food. And any food you buy now is going to be an investment in your well-being, your future. Folks, if you can get a case, 2 cases, 20 cases of, I don't know, meals in a can, whether it's Chunky or Denison's or whatever food you like that comes in a can, a meal in a can. That's good to have because it's just going to go up in value. Inflation is off the hook, everything else, right? Freeze-dried foods. You can get that from thepreparedmind.club. You can get food there. Long-term food storage, it'll last a long, long time. Canned food will last you 5 to 10 years, I bet. Long-term food storage, these freeze-dried ones, they'll last you 25 years. Now, when it comes to 5G radiation, I like the sound of that. Anything that's called radiation, I just love the sound of that if it's in my general area. You know, like putting my head in a microwave is about as smart and as safe as putting my head in an oven and turning the gas on, waiting about 2 or 3 minutes, and then lighting the match, right? It's not good for me. So standing in front of a microwave, which I know cooks things from the inside out, 5G microwave radiation being spewed everywhere, you know, with massive amounts of power. Not good. Not good. Unbelievable, folks, where we're at. Okay, Jolene, what do we got next? Who is stepping in? We got Kathy Lamaster. She says, so we have around 100,000 migrants waiting today at our border down here to come over. Shall we talk about enforcing Title 42? I really hope that wherever you're at, these 100,000 migrants, I hope they're looking across the fence line and seeing National Guard standing there. We had, what was it, over 24 governors of American states who said that they were going to help protect the border. I would like to know what it is that they're actually doing to protect the border. Are they going to use National Guard to enforce Title 42 to protect our border from invasion? Folks, 100,000 illegals, they get into our country about every 10 days. Sounds like you got a backup over there, Kathy. Hopefully they are facing American citizens saying, you ain't coming in here. It is an invasion. The purpose of which, folks, of any invasion is to overwhelm an enemy. Right? There's slowly, methodically moving troops into a country. Right? And then there's just an invading force of, you know, wackos. And this is what we're seeing with the Mexican and Central American and South American and Caribbean and Africans and Middle Easterns that are just flooding into the country via the southern border. It's dangerous, and it's to destroy our country. Not to mention their voting record. I don't think we have a whole lot of demographics on it, except to know that the Democrats say, hey, you either vote Democrat or we're going to kick you out. I'm sure they understand the quid pro quo that's in place. It needs to be enforced. And I truly believe that we need to have in our country a way to hold politicians accountable for failing to do that which they're charged with. Now, imagine a governor, right? Gets sworn in as governor. His job is to protect that state, and he has executive authority. And within his constitutional limitations, he has to act, right? Now, if he doesn't do that, nothing happens to him. He just gets unelected. But there ought to be a way, and one way to make an officer or an agent or an employee of the government to act is a writ of mandamus. That is a court order that mandates someone perform specific behavior, do their freaking job in this case. Is that how we have to do this? Is there a writ of mandamus that could be done at the Supreme Court level saying, Joe, you have to enforce Title 42, you have to protect the border? Or you're in contempt of the Supreme Court? It would be nice if that was the case, if we could enforce and then hold these people totally accountable. I would love that. And then Joe could say, well, yeah, I sent 5 people down there. Well, that's wholly inadequate. That's not good enough. So, how do you gauge the response as adequate? doing their job, enforcing Title 42, enforcing border protection. It's interesting, though, that Joe Biden hasn't been able to get it off the books. Apparently, they lost a court case over Title 42. They can't just throw it out. No, I think Title 42 is in the Code of Federal Regulations, which means a law was passed. I think about these things correctly. We're supposed to be a nation of laws. Okay. We've got a problem, Kathy. This is a huge one. I agree. It's very, very much in our face. Title 42. How about every, constitutional amendment, right? The First Amendment, Second Amendment, those need to be enforced. And the way you enforce those is you get government out of them, because they're about freedoms and liberties of the people. And I think we, the people, should also be able to act the same way you can do a citizen's arrest if you see a crime, the same way you can defend someone's life if you see that life, right, your own or someone else's, is at threat or at risk of great bodily harm, injury, or death. You can defend them. I see this invasion of our southern border as a fatal attack, the attempt to murder our nation and destroy its laws. And I think we, the people, ought to be able to do citizen's arrest of all of these illegals as they come across, and that they ought to be able to arrest anybody for not doing their job. That is, government employees need to be arrested for not doing their job. And if they're not being told what to do and told to act, I think their bosses need to be arrested and prosecuted. It's such a mess. You always thought, I always did anyways, that the government was there to do its job, and that sometimes they didn't like their job, but they did it anyway. It may be difficult. They may not get paid as much as they would like, but you do your freaking job. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, very much for the topic. Moving along, we've got Uman. He says, as soon as Prickster, that would be Governor Prickster to you, the governor of Illinois, the fat bloated jackass, as soon as he signed the ghost gun ban, Uman said, quote, just watch. Now you're going to hear stories about ghost gun shootings in the news. First story this morning, today, was on the Chicago News. And he says, called it, yes, you did, buddy. Yeah, they're going after the ghost gun. Now, was it really a ghost gun, or was it a stolen ghost gun, or was it a stolen gun that had the serial numbers scrubbed off of it, or ground off of it with a grinder? We don't know. We'll never get the truth, because it's all propaganda and lies, right? The way things are presented. Never mind the thieving, murdering thug. It's the gun's fault. Right? Never mind that in England, where guns are less available, the bad guys just use other methods to kill, murder, rob, and screw people over. I watched an interesting video a couple of days ago of two guys on a scooter. They looked to me like they followed this lawyer and his girl from a bistro restaurant. And they got ahead of them on the road and then attacked him, held a knife to his throat, threatened to kill him, and stole his shit. Right? If he wanted, he could have cut him, stabbed him the way there have actually been folks, mass murders with the assailant, the bad guy, using a knife to kill people. Unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable what's going on in this country. The attack on the Second Amendment, the attack on the border. Crud, I did not want that one to go away, because it was a great story. So, shit. Let me get that back. Unbelievable. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second here. I'll find it. There it is. There's another way they're attacking and taking our country out. And it is the schools. The National Teachers Guide is advising against using the terms parent, male, female, mother, and father. Folks, they're saying science teachers shouldn't be using that because it's dangerous, right? It oppresses others. So they just shouldn't use these terms. Science shouldn't recognize them. So I'm just like, okay, they're trying to use science again, folks, kind of like the science, right, of cerveza bug, the science of masks, the science of Jim Jones juice, the science of it all. Now they're trying to make teaching a science. So I say, well, what if a student identifies as a normative hetero man and instructs the science teacher that he has a father and a mother, and that he demands that the science teacher respect his identity and his identifying pronouns and his extended family pronouns and names for himself, right? Will the jackass teacher respect him? Right? Will he? I think it's a fine question to ask. I don't think so, folks, because that doesn't meet their goal. It doesn't help. It absolutely doesn't help. Okay, Jolene, yeah, they're destroying it. Guns, the border, kids. We got Mikey G with a question. And folks, it's not too late to get a question in, because these topics, they are far-reaching. They touch everyone. All right, here's Mikey G. He says, has there been any updates or verification of the leaked Chinese war meeting plans to invade the continental United States? There has been no verification that I am aware of. A lot of this helter-skelter super spy stuff, it's so hard to prove. And that's why there's still, folks, I mean, I love a good conspiracy theory. I love conjecture. I love reading between the lines. I love satire, making shit up. I love it all. But yeah, there's some stories that I try not to touch until I get something solid, right? Something solid to put my hands on. For example, I can discuss Soros and his understanding of both the Ukrainian military and their armaments, numbers, supplies, even the morale he can hear about from reports. And I would surmise and guess that George Soros has people on the Russian side feeding him information. I'm sure he has spies in Russia as well as the spies he has in America that are feeding him information intelligence. I can't say for certain, I can't quote anything, but I'm pretty sure that exists. As for plans to invade the continental United States of America by China, it wouldn't surprise me if they had plans, but they would have to take into account the total nuclear response. I know Joe Biden's the president, folks. I know that's dangerous. I know it's scary knowing that he could push the button, and it's scary understanding that he may not push the button if needed. And is it worth it to push the button to stop China? Right? Or would you just say, oh, no, we're just going to give the Western United States to China. We're just going to give it up. Yeah, because, I'm Biden. He blew it the other day when he was talking about Taiwan. He got off the record, right off track, and started talking about how there'd be a serious military response if China invaded Taiwan. Well, I think that should go without saying. Right? But then the White House staff jumped in. And they're like, no, President misspoke. Oh, okay, then China can invade Taiwan and there would be no response. Is that what we're saying? Biden really isn't in charge, folks. He's a title. He is a shirt. He's a tie. That's about it. Mikey, if we get any information on the Chinese war plans, you would hear about it. Definitely would hear about it. But we do have Mittens Romney. He is calling on NATO to prepare for a potential Russian nuclear strike or strikes. Mitt Romney knows this. Mitt Romney has people inside Russia, in the military, inside the Kremlin, at a super secret military nuclear strike. Right? See, again, it's hard to confirm these kind of things, right? China has this sort of meeting, and it leaked out, right? And Russia had a meeting, and it was leaked out. But in this case, I think this is fear porn that Mitt Romney is using, pushing for the American people to support further advanced, increased U.S. participation in this war in Ukraine. I think Mittens Romney, folks, is an asswipe, and he's worried about his own interests in Ukraine, that he doesn't really care about the Ukraine people. He's calling on NATO to prepare for a potential Russian nuclear strike or strikes. The response from the European nations against a Russian first strike. They have their own nukes, folks. France, England, Germany, they've got their own nuclear weapons, I believe. Right? Those should serve as a deterrent. So why is Mittens Romney doing this? Because he is going to lose his power, or some of it, or some of his money. And all of these people have demonstrated they don't care what happens to the Ukraine people. They really don't. They just want this fight to go on against Russia, and they want Russia defeated. They don't, it would be so much better for the people of Ukraine if Zelensky surrendered. They should have done it a long time ago. But people like Mittens Romney pushed and pushed and pushed. And a country like China, I guess if they keep seeing our military deserting, the Navy is having a desertion problem right now. The rest of the military apparently is having issues with finding the right size fishnet stockings, the right shade of lipstick to go with their camouflage. And it makes me sad, because the U.S. military was once just the greatest fighting force on the planet at one time, right? But I don't think that these idiots, these left-wing lunatic communist idiots that are joining the military, really have any clue what war is about, what the purpose of the military is. It's a mess. All right, enough of my pontificating and stuff. We got Serge, and he says, if the left wins, what faces will we see on the new currency? If the right wins, well, let's start with the left. You're going to see Harriet Tubman on the $100 bill. You'll see, George Washington. Thomas Jefferson on the $2 bill will never be seen again. Alexander Hamilton, Abe Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, certainly not. They've been insulting him long enough, but, you get Ulysses Grant and then Benjamin Franklin. I think they would all disappear. You would get the great thinkers. Half of them would be women, no less. The great feminists, maybe Margaret Sanger, maybe she could get on the $5 bill. We would definitely need someone like Woodrow Wilson. He could be an austere figure, but Woodrow Wilson on the 20. Yeah, we could have some really great liberal scum. And it shouldn't just be politicians. Like I said, Harriet Tubman, they've been pushing for a long time. The same way Benjamin Franklin was not an elected official or politician, but he served as a diplomat and a patriot, and he is the $100 bill. It would make sense then for someone like Harriet Tubman to be on the $100 bill to replace him. Now, if the right wins, what faces will we see on a new currency? I would expect the faces to remain the same. If by right you mean patriot, constitutional Americans. Because the question would be, why change it? Why change now? Isn't George Washington the first president? And isn't that why the first president is on the $1 bill? Right, the numbers just seem to line up. The most common unit of exchange is one that should have the most easily recognizable and respectful or respected face. I don't like Hamilton. I never really did like Hamilton. Hamilton Burr had their duel. Hamilton wanted a national bank, and then Andrew Jackson destroyed the banking system in the 1800s. The privately controlled banking cartel. He destroyed them and kicked them the hell out. It's interesting that we have two people heavily involved in the history of the United States of America and banking on the 10 and the $20 bills. And Grant, why is he even on the 50? He's not a great general, in my opinion, and not a great political figure. He was kind of a weak politician. Yeah, I don't know. Do I want Trump on a bill? Well, I think, the Trump $1 million bill already. Do I think Eisenhower should be on the paper money? No, but he was on the silver dollar that came out after his presidency. So, how do we honor, right, people? Well, do we do it by putting them on our currency? How do we make the currency have value? I think that should be the number one question about the currency. How do we ensure that it holds its value and that it serves us, right? The money shouldn't serve the banks, and that when we hold it, it slips through our fingers and goes back to the banks. The money should belong to us. The money should have value, and the money should be serving us. Right? So I think, and I do like the idea of a commodities gold-backed currency that is pegged to something, so that that value is guaranteed, and that it should be a unit that can be exchanged for that which is said to be of value. I do like gold coinage. I do like silver coinage. I think that our dollar, right? A dollar should buy a gallon of gas. A dollar should buy a loaf of bread. A dollar should buy a gallon of milk. A dollar should buy a dozen eggs. And so you should be able to exchange a dollar for those things, and a dollar should equal whatever gold is going to be valued at. Right? Everything should be adjusted down so the dollar means something again, instead of being just a ridiculously small piece of the value of something. David says, John, you haven't said anything about the sinkhole in China where they found the ancient forest. I kind of read a little story on that the other day. Yeah, giant hole, right? There's a forest. I'm a lover of the hollow earth / cavernous earth / other societies that have lived down on earth. If you listen or review Native American lore and history, they say that they came from within the earth and came to the surface. Right? That there's supposed to be civilizations that live within the earth. I don't know how any of that works and the mechanics and all that, but yeah, China has this thing. There's so much about the world, folks, that's hidden from us. So much about science that is an absolute lie. There's so much out there, and we don't get to know. Instead, we stay distracted with, can we even afford to have a meal? Can that meal be nutritious, or does it have to have a bunch of drugs and chemicals and shit in it to screw with our bodies? Does a glass of water have to be laced with fluoride so we are docile and idiotic so that we can be more easily controlled and the rich people can have their great dream of a new world order? It's just, it's sickening, folks. I mean, sickening. I talked about State Farm, right? The insurance and pedophilia support organization, State Farm, right? And like a good neighbor. So a good neighbor takes pornographic and sexual paraphernalia and material to school and gives to kindergartens. Anyways, they abandoned their grooming book program for children in Florida because there was national backlash. Number one, why are they taking it to just Florida? It's incredible, folks, right? Cancel State Farm. Tell family, tell friends to cancel their policies and get a new policy. Get a new policy first, and then let that other company tell State Farm to suck it. I don't give a shit whether you go to Progressive or Geico or Nationwide. I don't give a shit. Let's screw State Farm for trying to screw our kids, literally. If they hadn't been caught, they would push this sexualization on tiny kids everywhere. But they got caught. Just because they changed their attack strategy and their belief that children should be sexual toys doesn't mean that they're good people now, or that they're sorry, or that they reversed their goals and beliefs. And yes, it's illegal in Florida. It's illegal, as well as disgusting and perverted, to send sexual material to children in Florida under the parental rights law. You know, the don't say gay law that pedophiles love to hate. They don't like the fact that Florida's taking back control of their schools and getting rid of critical race theory and letting the people of Florida be people, Americans. State Farm and Pedophilia Support Organization. I think that's what they should be called. Cancel them. They're going to lose customers, folks, the same way Coca-Cola lost customers. For the same reason that a lot of national chains have lost prominence, because they've gone woke and they're going broke. Screw them. Screw them. I don't have State Farm, by the way, so I didn't have any problem in not using them before. Certainly, I will never use them again. You can't apologize enough. I mean, who was the jackass? In what office? In the State Farm Insurance Corporation that said, I know we should donate sexualizing material to children in kindergarten down in Florida. Somebody get me a copy of some kind of filth to give them. And then I'm going to sign a check as State Farm to pay for it. And then we're going to say, I mean, how does that happen? There was no board meeting. There was no committee. There was no approval subcommittee. How does this happen? Unbelievable, folks. But yeah, they're pushing for the destruction of our country. They're not going to get their World War III, but they might still try. Right? They're going to get their MadMax. We may get that, like it or not. Folks, chance favors the prepared mind. Aren't you glad you're a prepper? God bless America. Semper Fi. We're all aware now. We're all very, very aware of what they're trying to do.